Okay, Chairman, thanks to Mr. Dowling and Sinead, and thank you for coming in. I have a few, I'll do a quick fire questions because one of the things in the task force was to establish, say, the 4 movement rule and the 30 months, and that what we call specs, or what he calls specs, and I know that Grant Thornton was looking at that. My understanding is the processors and the retailers were asked about this and the different specs they needed in different countries. Is that correct?
Yes, sorry.
It is correct. And my understanding also is that, and bear in mind the market we're at today, I killed cattle myself there not too long ago. They were overage. No one worried whether they were in Board B or not. No one worried whether they were overage or not, because there's a shortage of cattle at the moment, and they couldn't care if they had 20 movements or there were 40 months. Can you tell me, and it's my understanding from the research I've done, that the consumer wasn't, Grant Thornton or nobody went out to the consumers, not the retailers or not the processors, the consumers that buys this meat, the people that buy it in the retail shops on a continual basis. Am I correct in stating that?
You're correct in stating that there wasn't a contact with consumers as such, but you have to understand the reason. The reason is that Irish beef is bought by customers. The customers are generally retailers, food service operators, or manufacturers. And they're the people that buy the beef, and they're the people who specify what they want. So that's obviously, it's to them that Grant Thornton had to go, because they're the people who are doing the buying.
But with due respect, I think it's the people that buy it and eat it is the people that I think it would have been no harm if they went to that. But look, they haven't done it, so that's it. I'm going to move on. Am I correct in stating that on the other report, in relation to offal and in relation to the price of a carcass, that while you stated clearly that they were able to get the facts here in Ireland, that some retailers and processors did not cooperate in giving Grant Thornton the information for overseas export. Is that correct?
Yes, the information from the stakeholders in Ireland was available, retailers, other purchasers, and obviously farmers and the factories themselves. They were not, Grant Thornton were not able to get from stakeholders outside of Ireland a sufficient amount of data to be able to create representative prices.
Okay, that's perfect. What was the reason, in your opinion, Mr. Dowling, and you've been in the task force a while, that the price drop in February just happened all of a shot and cattle were able to go up after that? This didn't happen in any other country in Europe. What was your thinking on that?
I don't know why the price, specifically why the price fell in February. That point was obviously raised by a number of people in the task force, and they asked that we would, as you know, the task force is made up of people appointed by the minister, but nominated by individual organisations, including the MII representing the processors. A number of task force members asked that we bring the processors in directly rather than in addition to their own representative, the MII representatives, and talk to them about a range of issues, including, as it turns out, the price situation in February. We did that. The processors came in and explained, and their explanation was that there was a very large quantity of beef moved from Ireland to the United Kingdom in advance of Brexit, that the cold stores, etc., were full of Irish beef. The demand fell in February, and the price fell with it. That's their explanation, and that's it.
Okay. In relation to the PGI status, I know there's an application in Europe. Has the task force, or is it an understanding that there's going to be a premium price for the PGI, or has any work been done on that to make sure that if we do get a PGI status, that it's at a higher premium price?
The expectation is that the PGI will lead to a premium over and above beef that doesn't have PGI status. Obviously, that will only be tested when we actually do get PGI status and the product is on the market with the PGI label on it. But the expectation is that it will, and the experience generally across Europe is that there is a premium on product which has PGI status.
Okay, thank you. And on relation to your submission, you talked about farmers getting, off the top of my head, I haven't it here in front of me, 160 or 70 million extra. What were those monies that you're referring to? Is BEAM one of them, and what else?
I'll ask Sinead to answer that, if you don't mind.
Thank you.
Ned.
Thank you, Chair. So Michael referred to 180 million in additional beef supports for beef farmers between September 2019 and July 2021. So just briefly, in November 2019, around 16,000 farmers received payments totaling 15 million euros under the beef pilot payment. That's the beef environmental efficiency pilot. In December 2019, payments were made to 32,500 farmers to the value of some 78 million euros under the BEAM, the Beef Exceptional Aid Measure, which related to market disturbance and was co-financed by the European Union. In November 2020, 27,200 farmers received payments totaling 46.6 million euros under the beef finishers payment. That was an exceptional payment funded from the Exchequer in relation to market disturbance caused by the COVID-19 pandemic.
Just one thing, sorry, Sinead. I think it should be made very clear, though, that when the 100 million came out and 50 million of that was from Europe, is my understanding. I think 70 million was paid off the top of my head, or 75 million. But that was because cattle were on the floor. Second of all, some of the schemes you've brought up there was before the protests or before the task force was set up. And thirdly, there was a reduction as well that we're seeing at the moment because of that BEAM scheme of 5%. I think that needs to be noted, that it's not sort of extra money that we're getting. The price of cattle, farmers have lost €200 a head. €100 is what they got. And I think that on it's about 25 cents a kilo. It actually wouldn't bring up half it. So I don't think that we can go saying that farmers were compensated fully for their losses. There wouldn't have been. And I understand that there isn't the money there in the Exchequer for that, but I think we have to be clear on that when we talk about money's coming out. The last question, one of the last questions, the Chinese market you have it outlined, is it 3,000 tonnes with all the work? When I remember myself at the time of the protest, I had to negotiate to try and get the Chinese group into a place. And I think it has been a total waste of time for the beef sector, the amount of beef that has got to China. Would that be fair to say?
If I could come in on that, Deputy, and just to conclude in relation to the payments, and it's just a factual issue, I suppose. Just on November 2020, 24,000 farmers received payments totaling 40 million euros under the beef suckler scheme, and there's a continuation of that this year.
But no suckler grant came out. I'm correct in that there was. I noticed on the chairman's submission, he talked about where there was talk about a suckler grant. He talked about monies that came out, but no suckler cow welfare scheme has come out, or suckler grant where we're talking about €200 or €300 to save the suckler herd. None of that was achieved, was it?
Well, the beef suckler scheme, for instance, Deputy, involves both welfare actions and environmental actions. So it involves weighing actions as well. And those I suppose, are new payment schemes that have arisen since 2019. So it's just a factual presentation of that. Just in relation to the value of the Chinese market, I suppose, as you're correct in saying, Deputy, that a huge amount of effort went into opening that market in 2018. 2019 and 2020 were essentially opening that market and beginning to see trade. And I suppose the issue is that the prospects for that market are very bright, that there is a significant demand identified by Board BIA for quality beef on the Chinese market. The volume may not be great, but it is a very significant outlet. So in terms of the department's market access work, as Maria has already outlined, what we're trying to achieve is to open as many market opportunities as possible. And then obviously it's a matter for trade to follow those opportunities. But we do believe it's correct to, in terms of diversification from our dependency on the British market in particular, to open those avenues to trade to the extent that we can.
Thank you. The last to the chairman. You're looking at the numbers of cattle and you're analysing the beef sector. Would you have any concerns about next year, Michael, in relation to the numbers of dairy cattle or dairy beef that will be coming on the system for next year? And would you agree that that factories can up the price when cattle are short? Like at the moment, if you look at the price at the moment, there's no one banging your door because there are 450, there's 470 and 80 deals being done at the moment. Would you be concerned with next year, or what's your thoughts? Or would you agree that the prices can be upped pretty readily when there is a shortage of cattle like we are seeing at the moment, and movements and age limits and everything seem to go out the window? How come that, if the retailers and the specs are so important in other countries, and that the housewife or husband or whoever is buying it is so particular?
In respect of next year, obviously one can never be particularly accurate in predicting how prices will go. It is true, obviously, that if there's a drop in supply, that prices normally go up. That's a function of the market. Don't know what next year will be like. The indications at the moment are that the market should remain reasonably strong going into next year. But I'd repeat, the work of the task force wasn't principally one of looking at how prices are likely to go, because that wasn't one of the things we were asked to do. We did what we were asked to do, which was oversee the actions that were agreed in 2019, and that work is to a large extent done. But the market is the market, and I would think next year could probably be reasonably strong, but I could be wrong.
Would you find it unusual, though, looking at the Grant Thornton report, and I've read most of them, that the specs of 4 movements, the 30-month, the industry, the retailers, everyone came back saying, we need this, this and this. At the moment, they don't seem to be concerned about any of those specs. Isn't that rather unusual if they were so important before now?
I suppose it is unusual if that's the case. All I can say is that the information from the market was that all of the specs are required by some markets, but not by them all. The under 30-month specification is fairly generally required in virtually all markets. There are requirements for movements, length of time on the last farm, in some, but not all. But there is a fairly general requirement that the beef should come from quality assured farms, and that, as I understand it, that remains the position.